Friday. Thank you for joining me here. My name is Alyssa Thomas from Penguin and Fish, where we make lovely and quirky hand embroidery kits. And I'm here every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and it's a time that we can relax and craft together for about an hour here. And I work on projects from beginning to end so you can be part of the whole process along the way. Tonight is another special night. We're doing a little series this week of embroidery stitches. 2 nights ago on Wednesday, we did the chain stitch. And here is our little chain stitches. You can see it on our, you can see them better here on our zebra embroidery kit here. There are all those cute little chain stitches, all these stripes. So we did that on Wednesday. And then yesterday we did French knots. So here's all of our experimenting with French knots. We also did a colonial knot, which is a variation. It's another knot that you could use. And we went through like the 3 things you might be doing wrong if you're having trouble with a French knot. So that one for sure, I would go check the replay of that over on the Penguin and Fish Movies YouTube if you're struggling with French knots. And then tonight, we are talking about the satin stitch. So I use the satin stitch for all of these little back plates and the teeth and these little wing buddies there. So I'm all set up. We are going to stitch some satin stitches tonight. I'm also going to show you a couple variations of satin stitch and how to do some tricky things. Like if you want to, for example, if you want to do a letter all in satin stitches, like some of my embroidery patterns that we have. We'll go over that a little bit as well. So thanks again for joining me for some embroidery. The reason I'm working on these 3 particular kits is that I am retiring them. I am not going to be printing them anymore. So I'm having a little retirement special for them. So we're kind of celebrating them this week. So here we go. Like here's the zebra kit. I am not going to be producing them anymore as kits. So there's a little retirement special now. If you get a bundle of all 3 kits, then you get a special surprise gift with purchase that's worth at least $25. So that's more than the price of a kit right there. So that bundle goes through the end of the month, which is tomorrow. So Saturday it ends. So just keep that in mind. I have a link here for that, or you can just go to penguinandfish.com to check that out. But yeah, so let's practice these satin stitches and be sure to ask any questions you may have. But let's make some pretty stitches. All right, I'm gonna flip you around and we can get going here. All right, let's just get right down here. Okay, so this is the example that I put in my email today. So if you get my emails, the last 3 days I've put picture and text instructions of how to do these 3 stitches as well. So there is the one little guy there. It's a little goofy shaped, but all in all, it looks pretty satiny. So obviously, satin stitches, well maybe not obviously, but they're called satin stitches because they make kind of like this nice, smooth, shiny, satin-like finish. So hence the satin stitch. And it's a great way to fill in small little shapes. This is the cloth that comes with the kit Sahid. It is just like it's an unbleached muslin. I like using, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I like using this muslin because it's easy to pull the thread and needle through. And it's just kind of fun. The unbleached, you can do bleached too. It's white, but the kit comes with unbleached. I already have a knot in my thread and we haven't even started. So I'm just going to pick up the floss that I had when I was working on this prior so we can get started right away. I got to cut a nice little fresh edge to that. That's a bit fuzzy. So I'm guessing that I'll probably have to use some more. Oh, it's a cotton fabric. So it is just it's just a cotton fabric. You can use like just
like a quilting weight cotton fabric. So that's something that you might find in like a quilt store or at a Joann's. Usually it's got a lot of patterns on, but it comes in white and unbleached as well. So that's basically what I'm using here. So I'm using, it's 100% cotton. If you just go into like a Joann's or somewhere, and if you say, I want some muslin, they'll probably lead you right to this exact stuff. So, all right, I am going to let's just look at this for a moment here. So, some things with satin stitch is all the stitches go in the same direction. So I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna go to like one of these other spikes, and we'll go through it. But then I'm gonna like come up here, and we'll draw some shapes, and we'll try some other things as well. Oh, it looks like some of you guys might be freezing again. I'm not having issues on my side here tonight, so hopefully it's just a Facebook thing. My video for YouTube will be fine, I think, so there's always the replay there. So, all right, for this little spike, I made all the stitches at a diagonal. That's kind of the first thing you have to decide is like what angle do I want my stitches at? So I could go straight up and down too. We'll do one of each. I just kind of like doing the diagonal. I think it adds maybe a little fun dimension to this guy, and it's just really easy to go from like here to there for a first stitch. So I'm gonna actually skip a couple just so we can start kind of fresh. So I'm going from one side of my shape. So this is the shape that I'm stitching right now. I'm going from one side of the shape to the other. So I'm going to basically cover up this line here. What is a sharp? Gretchen, are you talking about needles? Or maybe I said sharp or something. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. All right. So I just went here to here. So I'm going to do my next stitch. That's the first stitch. I'm going to come all the way back to the bottom. I'm not going to go right here. You might think, oh, I'm up here. I might as well just start my next stitch right there. But no, that is a weak way to do it. Then you only have a tiny little thread holding that stitch in. So I am going to go all the way back to the bottom, only like a thread or two away from where I came out there. And I'm going to go across up there again. So I'm not going in the same hole. I'm like a thread or so over. So a sharps, if you are looking at a needle called a sharps, well, just a sec. I'm going to just keep going here. So I'm going to always go down to my starting edge, and I'm going to go up to the second edge. You don't ever want to go like right next to your last stitch. I'm always going to go down here. So let's keep doing that. That's all there is to it. We'll do a few other variations of this though, and I have an idea where there might be some hiccups, and we'll take a look at that as well once I fill this in. But it's such a cute little way to fill in typically smaller shapes like this. All right, so for some of the questions, a sharp, when a needle, that's actually the name of a style of needle. Yes, but I mean, not all needles are technically sharp. Like a tip can be sharpened, or it can be blunt, like a cross stitch needle. It looks like an embroidery needle, but it actually has a blunt point, so you don't pierce the threads. But when when there's a needle pack and it says sharps, they're just talking about normal sewing needles. So what that means, like here's an embroidery needle. I can probably, let's get Zeb out here again. Zeb is my little needle holder here. I bet you I have just a plain sharps needle in here. Ooh, I might not. Oh, here we go. So here is probably what you would find in something called a sharps. So It's just like a short little needle with a small eye to use with like just sewing thread. Versus an embroidery needle is typically a little longer, and an embroidery needle definitely has that larger eye, so it can fit more or like heftier floss in compared to a little sharps needle like that, and it's longer. They both have sharp points. There is a similarity there versus, like I said, like an embroidery, like a cross stitch needle will have a blunted tip. It'll almost be a little rounded. And that's because with cross stitch you have that fabric that's all like gridded out, and you go into the little tiny hole. You don't want to actually pierce the fabric, so it's blunt. But when you see a sharps needle, it's basically just like a normal small little sewing needle, like something that you'd find in a sewing, like a travel sewing kit or something. Yep, you can use a sharps to hand quilt for sure. It depends how. Oh, like it depends really the thread you're using. Like if you're going to use a fatter thread like an embroidery floss, I would think I would use something more like an embroidery needle. All right, there we go. I am making really itty bitty stitches at the end here. But there is our first little, a little spiky, little back plate there. So you can also, you can go in different directions for all your satin stitches. So for example, let's do this next one just going vertical. And sometimes when I do vertical satin stitches, especially on a triangular thing like this, I like starting right in the middle because that'll get like my vertical line like kind of placement. There, like that, and then all the other stitches can come off of that. So I usually do one side first. So this is just another little way to do these spikes. I'm doing a vertical satin stitch versus at an angle. It's just like whatever you choose to do. I think I like doing the little angled bit just because then I have that nice crisp clean line on one side of the spike at least. Whereas if you do all vertical, then you have like a kind of a rough edge on both sides. I like it better too, Terry. I like the angled one. I think you got that like pretty nice crisp line, and it's just I think maybe a little bit more decorative having that angle. It's almost like the wind's blowing his hair back or whatever, even though it's not hair. But there we go. So that is another little spike done. But there you can kind of see a little bit of a difference, and it changes the way the satininess looks. Like the light hits it at a different angle really now, so it just feels a little bit different. Like if you for these back plates, I always kind of go in the same direction because then it has the same feel throughout. Like here I have them all kind of angled, so I think that looks kind of like the light's hitting it all at the same angle, so they all look kind of the same. Whereas if you do a satin stitch in a different direction, it just kind of hits it a little bit different. See, we're getting kind of light on both sides here versus just like kind of like the one side here. So, just pick what you like to do. I'd like to try some things. Let's just tuck in this end. I want to get some more floss, but I want to show you a little bit bigger area. Since this is a pretty tiny, tiny little area, these spikes that we're filling in, I want to fill in a little bigger area, and then we're going to try a couple things with it. Like I want to try a few variations to show you guys a couple different ways to do satin stitch. So let's see. Let's just do like some circles. I'm going to do circles in 3 different ways. want to do one thing yet. I want to take a look at like a letter, for example. So let's like look at an L. I'm going to do two different ways of doing that, at least. And then let's take a look at like something with a curve. Like let's do a G. We have to make some decisions on these. So I want to do a few things like that. So let's just grab some floss. Here, I got some green. Let's just stick with that pretty green. I'm just going to my Craft Happy Life, my little floss bin. This is where I toss all my extra floss from random projects. I mean, this looks a mess here for sure. But here's an end. Good. Oh, this is actually a different piece. So I'm just going to leave this aside. We'll probably use that later. I want a bigger piece though. All right. Oh, there we go. There was a whole pile together. So I'm going to do, I want to do just kind of what we did here, but show you what it looks like over a bigger area, because then you'll really get the satin feel. And then I want to do it in two other ways that you may want to try. That's really fun. So for satin stitch, I for sure separate my thread like this. So I want 3 strands of thread, but I'm taking them out separately because then when I lay them together, they'll all be nice and smooth next to each other, which helps our satin look. So I'm separating just one thread and then kind of pinching the rest and pulling it all out. And it looks crazy, but then at the end, it just sort of relaxes and there's no knots or anything in there. So I need one more thread. Oh, there was the, I do use 6 strands if I want like a really fat, hefty line, but I think it looks kind of clunky. Like I don't always do that unless I have a good reason, or if I'm working on a bigger piece and I want the lines to stand out more or something, then maybe I'll use 6 strands. But for satin stitch, I don't. And we'll take actually a little bit of a look at that after I get this guy done, this first little bit here. Someone asked about the difference between like DMC floss and other ones. So DMC floss is 100% cotton. A lot of the more expensive brands of floss are. So like Percentia is a brand, and oh my gosh, what is that one that starts with the letter C that I love? I forget. But anyway, there are a few more like higher end ones. Those are 100% cotton and usually like mercedized cotton. I think that's how you pronounce that. That's where it's been treated a little bit. Oh gosh, I forget kind of how that's done too. I'm gonna have to look into that again. But that's what gives it the shiny look to it. So if it's a cheaper brand, it might be partially polyester, and that makes it really hard to separate the strands. And it's usually like long Egyptian cotton, which has like long fibers. Okay, so I just want to do, Cosmo, that's what I'm thinking of. There we go, Sally. So Cosmo thread is another brand, kind of like DMC, a higher end brand. There's like Weeks Dye Works. They have a lot of really very pretty variegated floss, which is the kind that changes colors as you work it, as different color of dyes in it. All right, so I'm going to try and fill this space, at least partially. So I'm going to start, I'm going to do it vertically. You can do it any direction you want. Like sometimes I just draw like a little guide and they're like, okay, I'm going to make them this direction, but you can make them horizontal or like diagonal, like what we did here. But for this case, you could go horizontal. In this case, I'm going to just do vertical. So I'm going to start, I'm going to go from the lower edge to the top edge. So if this is my vertical, then, perpendicular to that, this is the top edge, this is the lower edge. So I'm going to start as far to the left on that lower edge, And that would be, okay, the lower edge, but it curves up and about right here. So right there is probably the farthest to the left on the lower edge. All right. So I'm going to go to the top, but the most edge to the left. So here we go. It probably is about right there. I'm going to go directly the same direction as, my vertical line there. All right, and then for the next one, I'm going to come straight down. It might feel like you're wasting a lot of thread doing this, but we'll take a look at the difference. So I'm going to just go about 1 or 2 threads away from the first one, but I got to go down onto the line again. So just a thread or 2 away, and then all the way back up to the top until I hit that line. Again, just like a thread or 2 away. All right, there we go. And I'm going to keep going. And as you go, so I can kind of see it already, but as you go, you might see, oh, I'm kind of angling. I'm making these too far this way. Like the stitches I'm putting on the top, I'm putting too many threads in between, whereas the bottom, it's all kind of scrunched to the left here still. I kind of auto-correct as I go. I don't really take stitches out. So you can kind of see, it's really, really subtle here, but my line is angling a little bit from the bottom left to the upper right, just barely compared to my line here. And, the amount that I stitched, this amount of space is a little bit bigger than this. All I'm doing, I think, is, like here, closer, you can kind of tell. I think I'm going too close. Like I'm only going like 1 thread over here, and I'm going like 2 threads over here. So it keeps angling. So I'm going to flip that around. I'm going to do like 2 threads here, and I'm going to try and sneak it in a little bit closer up here. So I'll do that for a couple of stitches until it feels balanced again, like there. Now it looks kind of vertical again. So now I'm going to go back to normal, or I'm going to just be more aware. Like I'll go a little bit bigger space at the bottom and make sure that I repeat that on the top. So I'm always trying to keep that same direction going, and I'm always kind of like auto-correcting myself as I go. All right, so I think that's all I'm going to do for this particular satin stitch. But look on a bigger piece like that. Look how pretty and shiny it is. So I'm going to show you the difference here. So for here, I went all the way from the top and the bottom. So we basically have a satin stitch on the back too. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it wastes so much floss. But here's what it looks like if you don't do that. And it's an issue of like how long your piece is going to last. So here's what the tendency to want to do is. So all right, I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to go to the top. All right, so that's my first stitch. But then it is so tempting to just go a couple strands away up here because it wastes so much less thread, and then go to the bottom and then do that back and forth. So bottom to top, and then top to bottom. I'll do 1 more. And then bottom to top. Okay, so here is the problem with doing that. First of all, it's not quite as satiny because these stitches aren't laying as flat next to each other. And this is a good example right here. Look at this first stitch is only hanging on to 1 tiny thread here. 1 itty bitty thread. So if we look at the back, see, it's just 1 itty bitty thing like that. So it's wasting a lot less, but that little thread could break at any moment, and then I'd have a huge loop right here. And it's just not laying as flat. Like, this is kind of looping out here. It's gonna feel, you're not gonna have that same satiny look to it. And you can really tell that just on the top here. But yeah, but the biggest reason, I mean, you could get away with it, but like look from far away, look at how the light's hitting it, how this is just so smooth, whereas this, it's got a lot of stuff going on. Like, you know, there's a little shadow going down the middle here. It's all about it just not feeling as polished and satiny. You know what I'm saying? So, and I just personally don't do it because, you know, this is a problem that it's only being held on by one thread. That is not like structurally sound. That could break at any second. So that's a problem. So you always want to go from one side to the other and just keep going from that same side to the other. Whatever you do, like how we did here, we went from, you know, this bottom edge to kind of like this side edge, and we just kept joop, 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 always starting our stitch at the bottom again. All right, so if you want something to look real satiny, so here is a variation of the satin stitch, and I think I'll start it over here, but it is with just one strand of floss. So I'm gonna just weave in this end here quick. So I'm just weaving in the backs of these stitches. So yeah, if you you know, we did the 3 strands of floss for the satin stitch, and I like that. I think it looks satiny. It looks like shiny and smooth still, right? But you still get a little sense of the twisting and, you know, that we have like groups of threads here. So it's not like a perfectly smooth sheen look. So one thing that people do for this, I don't think I've ever done an embroidery where I've done this, but one thing that you can, if you want like a real perfect shiny satin stitch, if you're working on like a really nice piece or something, you can use one strand of floss. So let's just get one out here. And I think with one strand of floss, my embroidery needle might even be too big. I might want to switch down to a smaller needle for this. But for now, let's just, well, I don't know. I got my needles. Let's give it a go. I have that Milner's needle here. Oh gosh, that's really small though. That might be too small. I think I probably have a bigger version of that somewhere. But what I'm liking about it is that it's so thin. Let's give it a go. I might be switching back to the embroidery needle real quick here. I might not even be able to get the one strand in here. Oh, just barely. All right, it's almost like sewing thread here. All right, so I'm gonna just tie a little knot here again. Might have to wrap it around a few times so the knot's big enough. All right, let's get a super satiny stitch. So let's do that in this circle here. Give it a go. Oh gosh, this is a long piece of thread. All right, so again, I'm going to start at one side. If you guys can see, I kind of have to find the spot. I kind of scrape the back of my fabric, and you can see that bump. That's how I know where my needle's going to come up sometimes. So I'll just kind of scrape, and then I'll get a sense of, oh, my needle's right there. I need to scooch it over a little bit more. That's how I don't have to like look at the back of my embroidery all the time. All right, I need to shorten this. I need to shorten this thread a little bit. It's a bit long. So let's just pull the other end down. Okay. So this needle is a bit sharper than my embroidery needle, so I'm hoping I don't stab myself. All right, now I want to get right in the next thread over. So this will probably take 3 times as long because instead of having 3 strands of floss, I'm only using 1. But if you want even a satinier look, this should do it. Ooh, that's a little let's just give it a little comparison. So this is going to actually take me a while to get any sort of chunk done here. Why don't I have batting under? Oh, for the satin stitch? Well, that would be a padded satin stitch, and we'll talk about that next. So sometimes you might want a satin stitch that's a little poofier. Or are you talking about the back? Like I don't have a stabilizer on the back or anything. You can do that. Having a stabilizer on the back helps hide your stitches. But I don't mind without a stabilizer. But here, now you can start to see it's just it's starting to come. Oh gosh, just poked myself. It's starting to come through the satiny stuff. Oh, you can. So I don't have a stabilizer on the back. You don't really need a stabilizer. I know people like it because it'll cover up stitches. Like if I'm stitching here and then I want to stitch his beak or something and I just jump, then that will hide that jump of thread. Like you won't see it on the front, but I try not to do big jumps like that. And I personally just kind of don't like the feel of a stabilizer. I like it feeling more fabric-y without having it. Although I have not done a lot of embroidery with a stabilizer. So the only stabilizer I use is that silky stick and stitch that I wash out when I'm done. And the only reason I use it, I don't really use it to stabilize my fabric. I only use it because I like printing the design on the front. And then stitching right through the design, and we've done that a few times here. But yeah, I should play with using stabilizers a little bit more. I just don't do it. I don't like making big jumps in my pieces, like jumping from one shape to another. I'd rather just weave in the ends and start fresh. Just because I don't like the toe catchers. I don't like having those big jumps. We've been calling them toe catchers on the back of my embroidery. All right, so I'm going to just make this last stitch here because I think we can see what's going on here a little bit now. But there. So let's take a look at that closely, though. I mean, you can tell it. You can tell far away, right away, the difference. Look how much smoother. I mean, I got one that maybe got a little away from me, but in general, look at, like, this is just shinier and smoother than the 3 strands. This is the 3 strands here. That just has a little bit more texture, doesn't it? Like it's all about how the light hits it in a satin stitch, to like how satiny it looks. But look how much smoother and shiny this looks, except for that one stitch that's kind of, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe I can go underneath it and poof up the rest of them and fix it a little bit. I think that helped a little bit. But yeah, so if you want it even flatter and shinier, 1 strand will do. And that's pretty slick looking. I like that a lot. All right. So that's that variation. And it really is, what look are you going for? Are you okay with just filling in the shape and having it look kind of shiny, which I'm perfectly okay with that. So I'm totally fine sticking to my 3 strands. Or do you want like this perfectly glossy, shiny bit? Then you could do just the 1 strand and fill up your shapes like that. So one other variation I want to show you is a padded, ooh, I'm going to switch back to my embroidery needle. I'm just going to tuck this thread in. But the last one I want to show you is a padded satin stitch, which, if you want, like, this would be so cute if you were doing like a flower and you like a cone flower and you wanted the center like circle of the flower to be like just a little extra, you can poof it up a little bit. So let's give that a try. So, all right, let's get, I'm going to get my thread. This is that, I think there's 3 strands here. Yep, so this is the other half of the 3 strands that I was using earlier. Let's use that. So for a padded, there's a couple ways to do this. You can actually put actual stuffing in, but the way that I'm going to do it is just a padded stitch with the thread. So, all right, to do this one, what we're going to do first is we're going to do a stitch around the outside. So you can do whatever you want. Let's see, I think I'm going to just do a back stitch. Back stitch is my go-to stitch, but we're going to first trace around this with a back stitch. And what that's going to do is first of all, it's going to raise up our satin stitch by the height of what a stitch is. So just, a millimeter, if you wanted a millimeter higher or something, this will do it. But it's kind of a fun effect. All right, and I think let's just keep with how we're going, like with these just little half guys. So I'm gonna just jump down here. We won't do the whole circle. So I'm gonna do like a little padded half moon. Okay, so we got kind of the outside shaped. So that's ready to stitch, but we want to actually add some of this padding on the inside too, so it's not like floppy. So what I'm going to do is just add a bunch of like little seed stitches. So I'm just going to every which way just kind of try and fill this space with stitches. You could do just more back stitches, just like another row a little ways away or something, but I think these little seed stitches will work. It'll cover like more area faster. So I'm just adding some more padding underneath here. So I've seen this done where people will stitch down a piece of felt here. So that's kind of neat. Like instead of doing all this padding, they will actually throw a piece of felt in there and like then stitch it down with like these little stitches and then do the satin stitch over the felt. And you can even stuff actual batting and padding underneath that felt as well to give it even a more like a rounded look even. Or a stretchy fabric like a knit fabric that will stretch a little bit if you stuff that underneath. Then you can really get some dimension. But tonight we will stick with just the padded. So, all right, so this is kind of the prep, right? I'm going to just work my way down again because I want to start at the bottom again just so we're consistent with all of these tests. Can't change more than you got to have some control. The control is we're starting at the bottom. So I'm going to start the same way that I did all these other ones. I'm going to start on the outside of that back stitch. So that back stitch is the padding. I don't want to see it. Oops, sorry, I just bumped you guys a little bit there. And I'm using 3 strands again. So again, this would get shinier and prettier with the 1 strand, but we're doing 3. So I'm going on the outside of the stitches for my first stitch, and it's the same deal, bottom to top, bottom to top, bottom to top, but we're just trying to be on the outside of these back stitches too. I could already tell it's a little raised up. And I'm not pulling super duper tight either because I don't want to squish all these stitches down. I just want them to lay flat next to each other. Ooh, that one I maybe went a little too close to the one before. We'll go a little farther away on this one to make up for it. Yeah, and now if we touch this, because we have the padding underneath here, it won't feel like loose or anything. It'll still feel like it's on a solid surface. But it has just a little extra poof to it. You could use 6 strands, but then with satin stitch in particular, you run into the situation where it looks less and less satiny, right? Because like look at with the one strand, how smooth and nice it looks, and how it looks less satiny with the 3. With the 6 strands, because they'll be all like twisted up next to each other, they'll just be like all the threads will be kind of angling subtly. They'll all be at subtle little different angles versus one perfectly straight angle. You know what I mean? Even the difference here, the 1 strand and here, 3 strands, they're all just angled a hair differently because you're dealing with 3 that are filling up the same space instead of just 1 strand. So you're gonna lose that more of the satin look with the more strands you use at once. I mean, really, I should just bite the bullet and get used to using 1 strand for satin stitching, but ugh, that just sounds like it'll take forever. My embroideries aren't precious enough for perfect satin stitching, maybe. I don't know. I just need to make it a habit, I think. Because look how pretty. I do really think this looks shiny and pretty. Like, look, when I touch it, it all moves like one piece of metal almost even. Just pretty. But there you go. So that's the padded. You can see from the side, though, look how much taller it is off of the, there you can kind of tell, off of the fabric. So that would give like a nice extra little poof to like a flower or something else. It really is kind of cute, all puffed up like that. But yeah, imagine putting a piece of felt underneath there. It would be even taller, even more puffed up. Like let's mimic that. This is not a great idea. I would want something in between, but I'm just curious what would this look like if it was a little poofier? So in theory, I would add padding before I do the stitches, but now I'm just all curious. I want to see what this looks like even poofier. Get some stuffing in there. I might need to do like an actual padded satin stitch project one of these days, like with a little critter or something, because I think this is actually going to be kind of cute. I need something else pokey. There we go, with a duller point. Get in there. Yeah, so I would make like my poofed up foundation first, and then I do the satin stitches on top of it. And I wouldn't be stuffing it with this thread either. I'd have a little batting or a piece of felt. But I just wanted to get the effect. But like, look, you could even you know how cool is that? Like, look how poofy that is off of the fabric. Like that's kind of interesting. That would be fun. Trapunto. So this would be kind of a way you could do a trapunto piece like this. So what that would be like is like, let's say we put a piece of fabric on, let's say, okay, so I have on my circle, I'm going to stitch a little piece of fabric, like maybe a little piece of knit fabric. Then what you would do after you stitch around that fabric or that piece of felt, then you would go to the back and you would cut a little hole in the back fabric, but not in the front fabric. And then you would take some stuffing and add it in there. You would just stick it in there like that. And that's it. That will poof it up. That's like what I could do for like this piece. And then I would stitch over the top. So trapunto is just kind of like another piece of fabric, and then you're cutting a hole in that back. It's kind of like an applique, and then you're cutting a hole in the back and stuffing it a little bit. Nice for balls on a Christmas tree. That's totally true, Terry. Yeah. Oh, that would be so cute, actually. Oh, I like that idea. I might have to figure out a project we can do that does a little bit of this poofy or trapunto like embroidery. I'm trying to stuff. It's coming out of the side there. I'm trying to stuff it back in. But anyway, there we go. That is another form you can do for satin stitch. Might be fun to try. There's one other thing that I want to go over, because people always wonder, I have a whole set of embroidery patterns where I have like a letter underneath, so it's like the whole alphabet. Correction, you're right. I'm kind of surprised too. In either of the splendid samplers, no one did like a little trapunto thing. All right, for letters, and I'm going to go over like curves a little bit too. We have some things we have to figure out. So, for example, if I'm going to do like long stitches this whole way here and then do short stitches, that might be perfectly acceptable, but what if I didn't want to do any long stitches? What if I wanted like my stitches all to be kind of like the same length? Then what do I do? Do I do, oops, that's not an L. There we go. Do I do stitches like this way all the way across? And then do I turn up like that? That may work. You can go all the way across. That might look kind of satiny. Or with letters, one thing that I like kind of doing is I kind of like splitting the difference. It's almost like a miter. So I'll draw a line on my embroidery before I start stitching it. So like this. And then I will do like, you can go either direction, but I like shorter stitches. So I'll do short stitches and then have that be one of my pieces that I fill. And then I will go the other direction. And then when I get to that line again, I will just stitch those little stitches like that. And then I get like this kind of cool miter in the middle, and that looks like really neat. That can look like super shiny one way, and then you get the other direction. I think that's just maybe a little bit prettier than cutting all the way across on a letter. Then it'll look like you have two shapes like that. I think something like that is a little bit prettier. However, going all in one direction is really nice too, but sometimes you might end up with just areas too big. Like, here, this is a long distance to cover. I probably wouldn't do a satin stitch any bigger than this, because then we're getting some toe catchers here, right? Like then this is like going to get snagged on something, versus down here with our little satin stitch, that's not going to get snagged on anything. You can't get anything in there. Whereas this, we're pushing the limit here, I think, of how big to go. So on a letter, like going all the way across might just feel like too much, and it won't be like, it might be a toe catcher. So in that case, I want to do some shorter ones, but then how do I do it? Do I split it like this? I prefer just kind of like splitting the difference there. And so with a curved one, you kind of have to do some figuring too. First of all, I have to figure out how do I deal with this. Do I go all the way across? Here I might miter it again. So maybe I'll go vertical like that, and then horizontal like this. But so what do I do with a curve? I can either go all the way across, again like this. That might make it look super kind of satiny. One thing I like kind of doing though is I kind of like pivoting almost from the center of the curve. So if this is kind of like the center, I will kind of keep going at an angle towards the center. So that means that I will have like a little bit bigger gap on the top side of that versus the bottom. And sometimes I'll just put one little extra stitch in. So like if it's getting away from me here, I'll do one like shorter stitch and then I'll cover it up with a longer stitch. So like a shorter stitch and a longer stitch until it looks like it's working again. But anyway, so those are a few ways to kind of think about if you're doing letters or some sort of weird shape that goes into another shape. I don't know. But I like having a plan before starting. And with a satin stitch, you really do need a plan because you have to decide, all right, am I going from bottom to top? Am I going, diagonal on all of these stitches, which could be really pretty? Am I going horizontal? You could split it like how we did here. I could do one like this, and I could do satin stitches up this way. And then I could do satin stitches the opposite up this way. So there's so many fun things you can do with satin stitch, but you have to decide beforehand, really. So like here, even with these little bitty ones, I had to make the decision, okay, I'm going to go up at an angle. And this one I decided to go vertical. So once you make that decision, then it's just filling in some shapes after that. But yeah, when you hit, a corner like that, this is kind of, I like doing that little miter. This is really fun, doing different directions. So just, play around and experiment. Oh yes, this would look super cute as a leaf, wouldn't it? You could even, when you're done, like let's make it pointy. Let's say this is a leaf. When you're done, you could do like a little back stitch going up the seam even. That would be kind of cute. See, there's so many options for these stitches, and even making something poofy like that. You could do a couple satin stitched berries or something, and those could all be a little poofy. Like we could put felt underneath before stitching. You know what I mean? All of a sudden you got a design and a piece. But that would be kind of fun. Now I want to do that. All right, you guys. I think that is probably where we're going to leave it for satin stitching tonight. But I definitely want to revisit this. I think there's some fun potential that we haven't played around with yet for the satin stitch. Some hidden potential there. So we will have to do some more. Ooh, yeah, throw some seed beads in there. Yes, Jane. Ooh, that's even looking kind of Christmassy already. Put a little, yep, okay, now I gotta draw little beads. We'll put little beads in here too. Maybe we want some of those bugle beads so it looks like confetti. Or some sprinkles in there, and get another leaf up here. Stitching it the different ways. Lots of potential. Okay, now I'm just getting crazy. More berries. And the little bird. He can hold another leaf. Okay, looking crazy. But there we go. Now the bird's holding a leaf too. All right, you guys. I'm gonna flip you around, and we'll call it an evening here. All righty. So that's fun. You know what? It would be fun to just do an embroidery here. You know what? When I do one of these marathon embroidery sessions, maybe that's what we do. We just start with an idea, and we just keep drawing more stuff and stitching it in. I mean, like, even these circles are kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like, let's just draw and stitch. That could be kind of fun. All right, but you guys, there we go. Our satin stitches. Man, even like, look how shiny. Look how the light hits it. I mean, this with the one strand. I mean, that is really flashy there. I mean, it's satiny. It looks satiny. Oh gosh, even from far away it sparkles, doesn't it? Cool! All right, you guys, there you go. I will get that up on YouTube at Penguin and Fish Movies. Sahi, this is an 8-inch hoop. That's kind of what comes with the kit, too. So, again, I'm doing this kind of series because I'm not reprinting these 3 particular kits. The zebra, the monkey, there's the monkey, and the alligator that we did here tonight. I'm not going to reprint those at all. So I'm doing a little bundle special for them through tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day. So it's, if you go to penguinandfish.com and the retirement or the retiring products section, or I have a link directly in the Facebook here. If you get the bundle of 3 of them, then you'll get a free surprise gift with purchase through Saturday, worth at least $25 of fun extras. So, all right. Oh, you have a real monkey chain? Oh my gosh, yes. So you need a little monkey guy. They're also available individually and stuff too. And if you buy 2, actually, of these retiring ones, then you get a surprise $10 gift with purchase as well. So it is a 8-inch embroidery hoop. I know that was the question. And it comes with all the floss. It comes with a needle. It comes with that same fabric that I'm using now, that muslin fabric. Then an iron-on transfer, an extra pattern so you can trace it for something else if you want it later. And then, it has like the cute little ribbon to decorate it and stuff with too, and instructions on how to do the stitches and everything. So it comes with all of that, the kit. And this is actually this is from the kit, how I got the alligator and the little birds on here. That's the iron-on transfer right from the kit. So all that's included. It is an 8-inch hoop if you are looking to frame it in the hoop afterwards or use the hoop later for something else. But that is the deal. So this kind of concludes our little embroidery session over the last couple days, the last 3 days. So be sure to check YouTube if you want to see the replays of the chain stitch. And we did that in several different ways, and they got easier and easier as we did the different easier ways. And the French knot and the 3 things you might be doing wrong. That might be catching you up with that French knot. We also looked at a colonial knot as well for funsies yesterday. And then tonight's satin stitch. They'll all be on YouTube at Penguin and Fish Movies. Tomorrow the sale ends, or the special. So awesome, you guys. And yes, stay safe if you are down south in Florida there. Yes, keep us updated on that. And I will see everyone on Monday again. I hope you have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you then. Good night.